Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and this is a special edition of Eating at a Meeting Live because it is Food Allergy Awareness Week. The whole month is Food Allergy Awareness Month, but this is Food Allergy Awareness Week, and I've got a full plate of speakers and a what are the things called? Challenge at the end of the week for you all to do and learn a little bit more about food allergies. But today, I did it right. I'm going to introduce you to this woman here, Margaret Brower, who I met through CaterSource 2 years ago, doing a webinar just like this, and then in person at the Anaheim Convention Center. Margaret transforms catering and venue teams with her Rainmaker sales program. She teaches EQ sales and interactive marketing. As a national keynote speaker, she empowers people and companies to reach their true potential. And if you follow her on Instagram, you will 100% get scooped up into what Margaret's message is. It's unbelievable. And I watch it every single day. So hello, Margaret.
Hi, Tracy. How are you? I am so excited and honored to be here because I am such a big fan of yours and your passion and what you bring to the catering industry. So I feel like I am thrilled about this morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I am right back at you. So we're two peas in a pod. We are. Okay, so this is a conversation about catering because it's Food Allergy Awareness Week and Month. We're catering to special dietary needs, and the subhead of this conversation is the insights and strategies for growing your catering business by catering to special dietary needs. I'm like, that's huge, and it's a huge opportunity. So how can education around dietary needs, and I actually have to preface the fact that I don't really like saying the word special dietary needs. I just say dietary needs because we're all special. Right? We all have our own special things and we just eat different ways. So how can education in safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences make catering teams better salespeople?
It's such a great question. And I hope that if you are a salesperson and you're watching this, you are asking yourself that all the time. Tracy, I think I should start by saying, what does catering and food and beverage, what that world means to me?
Yeah,
please. I don't know if you've ever read the book about love languages, but my love language is acts of service. And my career in catering sales is an extension of living a life of service, right? As a director of sales for so many years, I viewed one of my core responsibilities as strengthening my team's approach to service through educating them on whatever topic they needed to best serve their clients, our clients. And as a coach, my mission every single day through Instagram and through my client work is that I challenge others to think, what does this client need from me? Who do they need me to be? Who are they specifically? How can I best help them achieve their goals? And the power of food education, I don't think it really can be overstated by like harnessing it. It really transforms outcomes and it establishes these genuine connections that if we just look on the surface, like you're gluten-free, you need a kosher meal. We look at on the surface, it doesn't even dive into how we can adopt a mindset of being a forever learner about who we are helping. And when you educate yourself about safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage, you can open up an entire new avenue of what it means to be an engager with your clients, right? I think that like that knowledge, it just establishes trust and credibility, and it demonstrates the understanding of proficiency in your work. When you have that education, you are an expert master in your field. And the experience, right, that expertise, that education, it becomes a bridge and you have these impactful connections.
I love that. I mean, and it for some reason, it made me think of the NBC, The More You Know, those segments that they do. The more you know, the more impactful you can be. And one of the things that you do, and we'll get to this later as well, is you educate with empathy. And you really, and that's the thing is like, empathize with your attendees, your customers who have dietary restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not easy living with a food allergy, right? And so we'll empathize with them and figure out how to make their event that they're hiring you for to be spectacular, even with that.
Sure. Tracy, by demonstrating empathy in anything, but especially in like addressing someone's needs, no matter what they are, you foster these long-term connections, and that leads to repeat business and referrals, right? That's where the sales piece ties into. The sale and the longevity of the sale is just the byproduct of the client trusting you with their events in the long term, right? The
Mm-hmm.
business piece of it is is just the byproduct of being an advocate for your clients.
That's huge. I love that because it is. You're going to grow your business if you're advocating for them, and they're going to value you so much more, and they're going to come back. And or food allergy, the community is hugely tight knit, and they're going to say, "Who
Sure.
do you know?" Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say as a salesperson, I was doing a role playing activity with a sales team. And Tracy, you're going to play the person with the dietary restriction or need, and I know that
Okay.
you have that, so it'll be easy for you.
Yeah.
But let's say we were on an intake call and we were talking about your events, and I said, "Does anyone at your event have any dietary restrictions or personal preferences we need to address at your event?"
Yeah, I do. I mean, I personally am gluten free, and I know at least a handful of the attendees will have different dietary restrictions. One is vegan, and I'm waiting to get the registration list in.
So, option one response would be something like, "Oh, thank you so much for letting me know. We do have gluten free options on our menu. When I send you some menu options, I can just highlight the ones that are gluten free. And then you can, when you make your selections, just be mindful of that. You can choose any one of them." Option one, right? Not a terrible answer because you
Right.
have options. What if I started that though with option two? And I said something like, you have a dietary need. I've always been versed in dietary restrictions at like a preliminary level, but in the past few years, my entire family has had a crash course in gluten-free living with my niece. And she has celiacs. And so I feel like in the trenches of making that important for your guests because it's really been an important component in my family. And then I talk about gluten-free options.
Yeah.
Just that little extra of connection that we are on the same side, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Yep.
I get you. This is important to someone in my family, and now
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's important to you.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest things with the industry is that the people who have the personal experience are the ones that are making the differences in the kitchen, right?
Mhm.
And even as a salesperson, right? Because the people who don't have it in their families are like, we're good. These are not important, right? And
Mhm.
but so I think, but there's more and more people who do have them. So I'm hoping that we see more of that empathy with it.
Right. So
Yeah.
you just said something I think that's really interesting. Those that do not have someone with an allergy or a restriction or a need have less, um, could potentially have not the depth of understanding of someone who
Mm-hmm.
does. So this is what I would say to a sales team. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine your favorite person in the world, your
Mm-hmm.
favorite person. Imagine their face, imagine how much you care about them. And now I want you to imagine that every time they eat this thing, they get
Mm-hmm.
violently ill. That person, if you do not have a person in your life that suffers from that, I just want you to put someone that you love in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that that's what this person is feeling, that
Mm-hmm.
they're advocating for either themselves or an
Right.
important person in their life, right?
Yeah.
Sales is storytelling. So we have to tell the story of your advocacy. We are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dedicated to making this event a success. Why?
Right.
Because I care about your experience, because I care about the experiences of people in my life and the people in my company.
Right. Yeah. And that's another good point. The people in your company, how many of the people in your company, have a different dietary need, whether it's diabetes or celiac or food allergies or whatever, learn from them.
Yes.
Get them to be in the kitchen with you and say, oh, no, you can't do that. Or, hey, this is something that we make at home. And, this works really well for this, especially if you're doing a kid's party or something, right?
Right.
Or, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that when it's so funny that you said the more you know, because I make that hand gesture so many times. And anyone who is like above a certain age understands what that is, the more you know, right? Because like when I first started as a salesperson, I am Catholic, and I didn't have many experiences with kosher cuisine or like the ethics of kosher meals. And so the first time I had calls about hosting either a kosher event or kosher style, right? Different than a kosher event. But I felt very insecure, even though I was a strong salesperson. I felt insecure in that the client that I'm talking to definitely needs something that I can't talk with them as if I was
speak to.
And so what I did was I first went to a few Jewish friends and said, give me the education, give me the rundown. I want to know everything about this. And then I went to my boss and said, now I want to know on the logistics side about kosher catering. And I had a long yellow legal pad and wrote down everything that I can. But that's self-education, Tracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I am tenacious. So that was important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And education in catering is severely inequitable because we learn by our experience.
Right.
We get this collection of journeys in catering, and that's what we know. But I think that what you do is so vital because you're creating a baseline of education.
Mm-hmm.
You are empowering people collectively that this is how you can protect your clients, serve them better, and also just be overall better at your trade, right? At your career.
And that's the thing is like, I want you to be better and to make more money. I don't want you to get, my whole thing is like, somebody's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I teach people how not to kill or offend people with the food that they serve them. Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there's people with dietary restrictions who can't eat specific foods because it's going to kill them. And that's what this is Food Allergy Awareness Week about is about that. I mean, some young girl just died 3 days before graduation because she ate something, that had, I think it was peanuts in it, and it was not labeled anywhere. I think it was at the school dance, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
and then might be getting my stories messed up, but yeah.
No, but my former company, one of the owners is allergic to peanuts, right? So the facilities were all peanut free, no peanut oil, no peanut bakeries that were peanut free. That policy came from a personal experience, right? I can't tell you how many couples that I sat in front of where they said, my nephew, my niece is the flower girl, the ring bearer, and they have a peanut allergy, and I can respond, our facility is peanut free. The breath of relief that the sigh of relief that exchange encompassed was amazing because the worry is gone and it is attached to someone that they care about. So I think that the more that we can be educated in what we can do and approach it that way, have that can do mentality. Okay, our facility is not peanut free. What can we do to serve people with a peanut allergy?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Can you go peanut free? Why not?
Right.
I'm like, how hard is it to do that? Right. I mean, how many dishes do you actually make that have peanuts in them?
I've never not booked an event because someone couldn't get peanut butter mousse in their cake, but I certainly have booked more events because it appealed to the peanut-free nature, appealing to someone where now their family or themselves are going to be safer.
Right. Exactly. Wow. Okay. So with this in mind, and this is taking a little bit of a tangent, but the catering industry, is it appealing? And I'm going to say that there's just so many kids that are growing up and that have known about their peanut or their allergies growing up. But is this next generation of hospitality professionals, is it still appealing? I mean, is this an appealing industry for people? And I would think that, Kate, I would think that all these kids with food allergies, this would be so appealing.
So I hear all the time that like people are moving away from hospitality, and I think it is Chicken Little that the sky is falling. I don't think that that's an actual reality, because this next generation of young, passionate professionals, they crave a purpose, and we as veteran caterers need to do a better job of highlighting our role as an industry of purpose. The growing focus on sustainability and ethical practices aligning with like a younger generation's value make it such an attractive career choice. And I was at CaterSource this year, and I was blown away by the young talent that are, or just new into the industry talent that were coming and becoming caterers. The industry offers so many opportunities of creativity and innovation, and allowing like young talent to explore culinary arts and inventive menu design. The emphasis on inclusivity and diversity in life is there, right?
100%.
And so now when we compare that with a profession to say, what we do meets with the demands of the world, right? We are the impact makers. So I am a student of current events and pop culture, because I think that drives everything in the world. So when it comes to something like plant-based options, right? That's something we, if you're a salesperson and you find vegan options like uninspiring, then you need to look at someone like Lizzo and her Instagram and her TikTok. And she's such an incredible talent. And she every day shares these like mouth-watering plant-based meals. It leaves me in awe. The other day, she was talking about tacos. Every city that she's in, she looks for the best plant-based meal options. And she was eating cactus tacos and dipping them in different sauces. And she was talking about the benefits. Now, this is the thing. I was going to say, she could talk about the benefits of a plant-based lifestyle and use her pulpit as that piece, but she doesn't. She shows these millions of people the reality of highlighting all of these amazing options. So now, if you're a follower of Lizzo and you go in for a catering event and you're well versed in the exciting world of plant-based food, and you go to your caterer and they say, we have a garden salad and a fresh fruit cup as an alternative for your first course options, guess what? They know better. Shame on you. You know what I mean? You know better.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
I mean, that just, I'm currently planning a menu for an event happening, and I went through the cold hors d'oeuvres and the past hors d'oeuvres, and trying to pick things that were gluten-free or vegan or, you know, plant-based, variety of things. And I mean, I'm blown away because I coded it myself, because it's not coded, and this is a hotel banquet menu, but 83% of the foods contained gluten, and this is 30 total appetizers, cold and hot. 83% of them contained gluten. And the 2 that were gluten-free and dairy-free contained pork. And I'm like, hello, you know, and then there was 1 vegan item out of 30. I'm like, what are you thinking? And the convention, the caterer or the event manager of the property said, well, just give me your list of dietary restrictions and we'll just make them separate plates. I'm like, I've got 30 people. Why are you spending an additional amount of time to plan 30 different meals, 31 different meals, right? Because you haven't looked at your menu as a whole, holistically.
Right. My Fun fact, my husband is the chef owner of an Italian restaurant in Millbrook, New York, in the Hudson Valley. And he, his most popular appetizer are meatballs over polenta. And they're delicious. He sources from local farms in
Mm-hmm.
with some big agriculture area. And he uses ground oats instead of bread. They're gluten-free. And they don't say gluten-free meatballs on the menu
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that there is like a connotation to that of like gluten-free equals not great. But what his servers are trained on are these are gluten-free. So when when a guest says, what is an option for me? They can say, our most popular menu item is this, and they are also gluten-free, right?
Wow.
Totally different set of services. Totally
Yeah.
different. So
Yeah.
you can be a part of what we do best. Not we are modifying this and
Yes.
changing it. It's a big part, Tracy, with marketing collateral, where you were just saying about being able to look at a menu and say these things are not acceptable. If you have a menu like that and you're listening to this, I would say it's okay. It's all right. We will start somewhere. It's fine.
Right.
I don't worry about today, but there are really great ways to make it better for the next step of this. If you're
Right.
not using, I was just telling Tracy, you offline, that if you're not using AI in helping with your menus in the everyday, you should start, because you can have an item and you can put that item in and say, can you give me a vegan gluten-free alternative to this? And
Wow.
it'll pop it out for you and
I'm
give you the
gonna try
recipe.
that.
Yeah. And so something like that, if you are a chef and you're saying, okay, like this client wants the vegan, gluten-free, whatever it is, alternative to this. I was talking to my niece yesterday at Mother's Day, and I was like, what do you want me to say on this podcast representing someone who has celiacs? And she said, it feels bad when you are somewhere and everyone's experienced this collective amazing item, and then you are serving something so different. You're served something so different aesthetically. It doesn't even matter at the jump whether it's as tasty or not. You just feel like another. You feel
Yep.
it feels a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
So to make something that's comparable, right?
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
having this, and then this is just something that's modified a little bit.
Exactly. Well, and how old is your niece?
She's 21.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
my niece at 9, I took her on a trip to Pinehurst to go meet the chef, and I was like, Abby, what is it like? And she's now 21. What is it like when we go out to dinner, like 10 of us, and you've been served your dinner, and I'm still waiting for mine? She's like, I feel guilty. I'm like, why do you feel guilty? She's like, because I have food and you don't. And I'm like, because they're modifying something in the back to bring it because they didn't do the forethought to thinking through what options that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you talked about the not knowing kosher when you were growing up. Is there another example of something that early on in your career that was a bad example of something that you did? And I'm prefacing you with this without telling people what it was.
Yeah. I tell this story because, one, it is embarrassing, but I think it's a good type of embarrassing because we learn from our experiences. And so I had a local hospital, that I would do monthly continuous education seminars. So they would come in every month, full day conference, different physicians that the topic would appeal to. They would fly in the best of the best on that topic, and they would educate the physicians and staff. Some of the people that would attend were core parts of the hospital, so they would come every single month. So I felt it was an obligation to change the menu. They can't be having the same thing. And I had a wonderful relationship with the planner, and she said, oh, just take care of the menu and send it over to me. I trust you. So this one particular, this is many years ago. So when I tell this story, don't say like, oh, if that's what you offered. It was in vogue. And so they said, I said, you know what? I want to give them a nicer dessert this time. And so everything was set for the conference. It was going to be a lunch dessert, and they were doing stations. And I had a station set up and it was unveiled. The curtain went up, and a table of amazing stations and a chocolate fountain. And an hour before this, Tracy, I learned that the topic of discussion was obesity for the education conference. So here I am serving the fattiest of fattiest desserts and a chocolate fountain of gluttony for this. This is probably 20 years ago. And I wanted to crawl in. There was such a disconnect between the questions that I was asking the planner, right, the host, and what I was delivering. You could just plan the menu as, oh, I'll just plan the menu, without knowing that a salesperson's job, even when you have that trust, is to be a great question asker and an even better listener. Right.
Yeah, especially, and I like the fact that you've learned that from that, because that's really important to understand what's the topic being discussed. Can you incorporate the food into the overall agenda, right? Really emphasize what can somebody learning about obesity also engage in that with the food that they're eating, right? Yeah. And not serving a bowl of berries, God help me, because that's what everybody gets, but could that have been a different dessert that was healthy, but just as decadent as chocolate, something like that, to think about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not only just like in the corporate sector, it's also in the social sector.
Yeah.
If someone says to you that I have a guest with this type of dietary need, and you just automatically go into what you can offer them, I think we sometimes skip the step of saying, like, what kind of food do they like, right? Imagine just someone saying, I want to plan my wedding menu, and you go into, this is what I think you should have on your wedding menu, without even asking, well, what kind of food do you like? What kind of restaurants do you go to? Right. What's the vibe that you want for your day? When you dig deeper, I practice something called 3 layers deep. I suggest every salesperson does this. When you ask the first question, you get the first piece of information. You have to go a second layer deep and a third layer deep. So it could be as simple as, okay, what type of vegan cuisine do you like? Or what type of restaurants do you go to? Tell me more about that. Whatever it is, when you go through the layers deep, you are a better salesperson.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is one of it delves into helping them enjoy that experience. And I told the story a couple of weeks ago, as I went to a dinner. It was an 8-course dinner for a book author, and they were designing it on the food that she talked about in every chapter. And I'm like, I really want to come to this. It was $100 dinner. And I'm like, but I have these dietary restrictions. And he's like, send me the list. And he actually Jason pasted it up in the kitchen all over. So he knew what he could make me, and because I had a can have and a cannot have list.
Right.
And he's like, this was great, because I rearranged he modified what he was making me based on still on the menu. And I had an 8-course meal with the author sitting at that author's table. And it made me feel so included in that meal, because he didn't just say, oh, well, this is what we're serving. Right. Yeah.
It just goes hand in hand with that selling with empathy, empathetic selling. That's my whole mantra about how you walk into your sales life in catering. How can we sit on the same side of the desk? Right. And food is such a personal gesture, right? It's so personal. It's elements of identity and culture and health and sense of belonging. In my family, food is love. And it's not sustenance. It's like a language of care. It could be an expression of heritage. It's a vehicle for connection. It's so many of those things. And it's the difference of stepping into an event and your heart like fluttering with anticipation. Am I going to be able to eat at this event? And then when you walk in, finding out that the menu is a closed door, right? That Nothing aligns with your needs or your choices. And that disappointment, it's palatable. It's such a
Right.
heavy weight. It overshadows everything else. You, as a planner, as a salesperson, you put so much into planning to create a celebration of joy, and someone is now in at that event as a spectator of the celebration rather than a part of it. Right.
That's a really good explanation. Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, when you plan with empathy, you can see that the menu speaks to someone's needs, right? The sight of the dishes brings joy without worry.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you talk to your server, when you get that like understanding nod from the staff,
Mm-hmm.
that they have a depth of understanding about your restriction, or
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as like effortless inclusion, right?
Yeah.
It's more than just gestures.
Right.
They speak to being seen and that you're respected in this environment, and that like food inclusion, to me, it just says that we see you, we value you, we want you to savor this experience without compromise, right? And that
That's huge, Margaret.
that's what you were, I kept thinking about, like, what does food inclusion mean to me? And that's what it means to me. I really feel like it is, it ensures that every guest, they feel welcomed and cherished, right? And it's such
Mm-hmm.
a simple thing, but that's what we want in hospitality. That's all we want, is for our guests to feel like you were welcoming them into your home, and we want them to leave feeling like they belonged.
Margaret, I don't even have to ask you the question that I always do, because you epitomized it. It really is. It is that in and of itself. And at the same time, while you're doing that, just so you know, you're going to make money, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you're going to double your income because you just made a fan for life. And that fan is friends with all those people in that room. Right.
Yes.
And they're going to have a party and they're going to invite all those people. I'm like, how much more money did you just make? And so having empathy for who your client is and who their guests are adds so much more to the bottom line across the people, planet, and profit.
Yes. The sale, when we focus on the sale, when we focus on the money, you will always lose. You will always lose, because you're concentrating on the what, right? Mm-hmm. This is what we sell. We have gluten-free options. This is our menu. We have, you could rattle off, like, oh, we recycle and we try and compost, and, but what, right. It's the what. When you create those experiences that has such power to transform what could be a dining experience and to an area of belonging and comfort and joy, and that makes something so memorable that they buy from you in the future. They buy more from you in the future. They tell their friends that you're the best. They are an advocate of you and your business now, right? Oh, I have friends that people like them. Tracy, how many people do you know that have dietary needs? Right? Probably a lot, right? Because that's just the law of attraction. And so now when you have an experience, I know you do this anyway, when you have a positive experience, you shout it from the rooftops. And so do I, and so does everyone else, because we love as our just sense of self when we feel that we were taken care of. Right. And so don't focus on the sale. That's just elementary. Focus on the service.
Right. Well, and that just goes back to a post that I saw you do on Instagram about going to seeing who's tagged you, right? Because that kid who's on Instagram and you just plan their bar mitzvah for them, or their Mother's Day event, right? And they tagged you, hey, Rainmaker Sales and Marketing just catered this event for me, and everybody knows that I'm gluten-free or vegan or whatever, and this is what we were served, right? I'm like, that's your sales card, I mean, that's, you said something of the sort in your Instagram post. I'm like, but that's the reality of it too, is like, really look at who's tagged you and why they've tagged you, positively or negatively.
User-generated content. That's what that is. That's not you saying you're the best. That's someone else saying it. Right. So I implore you all to get reputation management cards of when you have wowed someone, especially when it comes to what we're talking about food inclusion. When you have someone who writes you a letter that this is what happened, have either at the event something that a captain, a maitre d' can give them and say, that's our goal, and that means the world to us. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your experience, that would be our best thank you that we can receive. So now they're sharing that you did this for them and that you are worthy of other people's business like them.
Right. And just because I saw this like 5 minutes before we got on here, Taylor Swift on Friday night at the Philly event, she noticed that these girls in the front row were getting not harassed, but harassed by the security officer. And she's like, in the middle of her show, is like, stop it. They're not doing anything wrong.
She yelled at. She didn't do anything.
Exactly. And then the young girl I saw on the Today Show, they shed, and she got on Instagram or TikTok actually and said, this is what happened. And she's like, the security guard didn't want us to have fun. We were just 4 girls or whatever, group of girls trying to have fun. They ended up with tickets to tonight's show or last night's show.
Yeah.
I mean, because
the girl who it happened to went on TikTok and made a video and said, this is what happened to me. And she said it. So now not only are people reporting on what was going on, but the person that it happened to is now saying, this person advocated for me. Oh, don't get me started on Taylor Swift. I love her.
Oh, I know. And I found out yesterday that my niece had an extra ticket to the Philly show on Saturday. I'm like, damn, I would have driven up to Philly and go to the show.
At the end of the month to MetLife Stadium. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh. My niece said it was the best show that she's ever been to in her life, and she's 22. All right. So and I want to say shout out to John Chen. John, we've been chatting it up, and even though it says Facebook user, I know who you are. Greetings from Seattle. So thank you for watching us at 6:37 in the morning. Appreciate that. Okay. So Margaret, we met at Cater Source 2 years ago, or via Cater Source, and I saw you at Cater Source this year. We were both speaking at the convention, and I attended a session where one gentleman, and this is not food allergies, but it could be related to it. It was about alcohol, and I said, well, what about the non-alcoholic market, right? And he literally just said, I don't believe in it. I think it's stupid. And Coke and water is just fine. And I'm like, and he went off for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, great. And then another friend of mine went into a different session, and from the stage, a different speaker, somebody asked about dietary restrictions, and he's like, yeah, we're over those things. We're not handling them. And so my question to you is, you kind of said it a little bit, but what do you say to those two people?
So it's a good question, because there are a lot of people that I always try to practice empathy in no matter what I do. So I'm trying to empathize with the person who said those things. Right. One, I would want to see, what do they specialize in their catering? If they lean into something else, if that's what their expertise is, and they're not leaning into what we're talking about, well, then they have a niche, right? They're going to be in their own market, and they're going to lean into that, and they have their clients, and who they are serving is enough for them, right? But I also encourage everyone to lean into opening your market, what your collection is, with an open mind and a willingness to learn and innovate. So if years ago you were the person who said, I only do X, we only do plated meals. We're not doing buffets, or we only do lunches. We're not going to be in breakfasts and dinners. Okay. So if that's the case, then do what you're doing the best. for the rest of us who approach things that we're innovators and we change,
Right.
and we're going to flex to our inclusive environment,
Right.
and tap into growing our segment of the market and make decisions based upon increasing sales and customer satisfaction. Those are the people that I like talking to, because that's coming from a place of yes, right? Coming from someone who wants to. So, Tracy, we're never, as educators in our field, right, as people who are passionate in education, it's not always going to land the same when we talk about things. It's not. So what I have faith in is that there is enough of us who want to increase our sales and grow customer satisfaction, right?
Right.
The people that don't, they're not going to. No matter what you and I say, they're not going to do it, and that's fine, and be who you are, right? But for the people, the rest of us, I would say you are just, you're able to talk to more of an audience base, and if it's something that's profitable, then you should be interested in it. If it's profitable, then be interested. Now, it also is the difference, and I don't know what you'll think about this answer, of being a Cheesecake Factory menu, right, of 92 pages, and something that will serve everyone, but do I do anything really well? Because you can't be perfect at everything, right?
Right.
So I don't say to go that route either, where you are going to put everything on your menu. But I do think you need to think about, how can I serve this? And maybe you have a station of a mocktail station where you can put it on your menus and you charge accordingly, and you have options for a non-drinking clients, right? And when someone says we have a crowd that's that doesn't drink, 50% of our guests don't drink, well, then you are already equipped with an option for them.
Right.
And then you can customize that based upon their specific needs. But I think saying, I don't do this, I'm not interested in this, I doubt that you're going to be successful in the long term if you approach new situations like that.
Well, and I get your entire, like, your husband owns an Italian restaurant, right? And if he makes his pasta fresh in that kitchen, right? I mean, there's flour flying up there, right? Or think of a Panera bread or whatever, where fresh bread, any kind of place that's making fresh bread, there's flour in the air all the time. The ability for you to do a 100% gluten-free dish is slim to none, right? But you can put safety practices in place that you can do this, or you can sanction off. So there are some situations where you will not be able to accommodate something, and that's okay. But be transparent, but also look for the opportunities that you have to actually create those experiences for those people. Right.
And I think that if you think that you're going to keep going without people asking you about your sourcing in the long term, get it together. Really? Get it together. Like, my nephew earned his master's degree from the University of Miami in aquaculture. And he is working for a company called Ideal Fish in Waterbury, Connecticut. And they are recirculating aquaculture, like fish farming, and they raise sustainably branzino. So part of every person in the company, their work is education. So they work at a public local farmers market to educate people about their business. And we talk about the conversations that he's able to have with the public on aquaculture and sustainable fish. It's amazing because, one, totally underestimate how people are so researched in this, care about sustainability. And the second piece of it is, if they are not, you can create that education in a really approachable way. You can teach someone, what does that mean to you and your body and your health, and the impact that it makes on the environment. And I I just think if there's anything that I think about, I'm so excited for this next generation because these are the things that they care about.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of a story, and this was 10 years ago. I was working at Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, and I got tickets to the event, and I had my parents come, and they brought my godparents, and they sat in a session on sustainable seafood. And they're like, and I'm talking, I want to buy my shrimp from the local Georgia farmer who, all that.
Right.
And they're like, Tracy, did you know that? I mean, they came and I'm like, I've been touting this for years. And then they come and they were like, hey, did you know this? And did you know this? And did you know this? I'm like, this is my parents who were 70 years old telling me about now sustainable seafood. And I'm like, because they got that education from somebody, outside of their normal realm of who's preaching it to them. But they thought about it and it changed the perspective of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really going forward is really what not only the millennials and Gen Z are looking for, but a lot of people our age are looking for the same exact thing. We want to know who our farmers are. We want to make sure that we're feeding the people that we care about safely. And we want to make sure that everybody's included.
Yes. And there are two different things. I could talk to, if I was a catering salesperson and someone brought up sustainable fishing, like sourcing to me, I could give them like a really we get our fish from here and whatever. But if I just took it one piece more and I told them about my nephew and sprinkled that in with a breath of education and explained why that's passionate and exciting to me and ask why it's important to them, well, now we've created a bond over our passions and I created a sense of trust. And if you don't think that people buy from the people that they trust, well, just look at any, case study of why people make their buying decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you've kind of already answered the question that I always end with is what does this safe, sustainable, and inclusive mean to you? So I'm going to end with what's your favorite food and beverage to eat? But do you also have one that you love to sell?
Oh my gosh, what a hard question. I didn't even think of that.
I just came up with that.
What is my favorite thing well, I love food and I'm an emotional eater. So I feel like I'll start with the things that I love to sell. Without selling salesy, my favorite things to sell are things where I can extract the story from the person that what's underlying in here. So if we talk about cheese, which is actually my favorite thing to eat, if we are talking about that, then I like to pair what the collection of my catering company does well with that. If you are a Ranger fan and your fiance is an Islander fan, well, then I want to make a playoff station and make it something that's I feel like that's the magic. And it doesn't always equal a higher cost to the clients, right? You can do amazing things with signage and just the psychology of sales to make that personal at the station. So those are my favorite things to sell when we have food that is part of a story. My husband and I, at our wedding, we had margaritas as our, because I'm a margarita drinker, and that was our signature cocktail. But the signage said a Freeport sunrise because that was what our first date was. We talked until we saw the sunrise in Freeport. So when you're able to make those things really personal, that's, I think, where the win is.
That's awesome. That's very cool. And okay, I do have one more question because it came up with what you were just saying. And as a salesperson, you really know what your catering company can do. And I mean, you know what your chefs can do, and I think and I'm going to take it out of catering and I want to put that into hotel sales for just a second. I'm like, there's so many times where hotel salespeople are just like, here, this is your food and beverage minimum. They're not selling that. Can you just give one quick tip on how we can really, a salesperson knowing the food and beverage that's being served and the capabilities of the kitchen is important?
Yeah. Well, first they have to care, right?
Okay.
That's the thing. You have to start from a place of, I actually care what I'm serving. Not every salesperson is going to be created equal. And so I think it is my responsibility as a sales coach, and I think it is directors of sales and owners' responsibility to create an environment, no matter what you're selling, is we care about what we are selling and it actually matters. So simple things that you can say as a salesperson, like, are things like, it's not lost on me that you have a lot of options to go for your catering, your meeting, your wedding, your special events. It's not lost on me that you have, but in return of that you're giving us that business, I'm going to show you that we have a commitment to making this really special and personal for you, right? That sentence is a disclaimer that this is personal. And now, if you were to deliver what your menus are, it already establishes the baseline that I'm coming from a good place. Right. So I think that I think you can't fake it. Yeah. I think you can't fake it. It really does have to come from that good place.
Oh, where's your empathy? And I just have a quick joke on empathy. This morning I was walking and I ran into a friend of mine and there was a worm squirreling across the sidewalk. And it's now the mode that they're doing. And I don't want them to die from the heat. So I usually pick up a stick and move the worm over to the grass. And he's like, you're so empathetic, Tracy, even to worms. You're such a character. Not to end this show about talking about worms, but we get a worm pie, you know? Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for this experience.
You're welcome, Margaret. Thank you. And this is Margaret's website, Margaret at Rainmaker. Well, your email is Margaret at Rainmaker Sales.
It's MB. Rainmakersalesmarketing.com is long enough. So it's just MB at rainmakersalesmarketing.com. And that's the handle for my Instagram too.
Yep. And check her out every single day. She has got a fantastic sales tip for you if you're in catering sales or if you're in any kind of sales. She's got some great tips. So Margaret.
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, Tracy.
Likewise. Thank you, Margaret. Everybody, I'm here tomorrow as well. We're going to talk about the U.S. food code. It was updated in December and it actually calls for allergen labeling on unpackaged food. That means catered food is required. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. as well. So come back, and until then, stay safe and eat well.